Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Liners, a series centered around key influencers and players in the performance marketing space. My name is Joey Liner of Liner Connections. I'm really glad to be here after LeadsCon, coming off a lot of high energy, high excitement. It's just been really one of the best shows that I've ever attended, and I'm really pumped for my guest today because we were just chatting about before we started recording. Like, this was probably the biggest year for home services. So without further ado, I got the king of home services, Mr. Ruben. Say hello, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Joey Liner Connections. I've made it, Mom. I've made it in this
You
space.
made it. Made it. So Ruben and I've been friends for I think about a decade. I went back and looked at
Yeah,
LinkedIn, and um, we've always hit it off. Just always had a good
yeah,
connection. Um, just when we get together at shows, we try to maximize the time together. And
yeah.
he had thrown out there on LinkedIn that a good idea. It's like I wanted to get him on the show. I want to talk about home services, but even better, human connection. Just beyond that, taking our dogs on the show. We put up a poll, and everybody said, "Hey, yes, bring your dogs on." And of course, my dog's here, and she's passed out.
It-
But we will get them
I
on at
mean,
some point.
when she wakes up, when she wakes up.
Yes, yes. But thank you for kicking that off, man. And
Yeah,
dude, you are known throughout the community as and no joke, you are the king of home services. You've spent so much freaking time getting to know the home services space, and like you've grinded through so much. Like it's not, now everybody's talking about it at the shows and publishers, buyers, etc. But
yeah.
man, you like really, you're a pioneer. You helped like build out this community. um so yeah, I'd say let's just get right to it because it's the
Yeah,
hot
yeah, yeah.
topic. Like, what's going on out there? What's your take on, because you've lived through the ups and downs. Like, what's going on? Why is there so much attention to home services lead generation?
Yeah, no, that's well, one, thank you for having me on. I don't know about the king of home services or pioneer. That makes me feel old. Um, but in terms of home services, I think there is so much attention on it right now. I think first, if you've seen the evolution over the last 5 years, you've seen a lot of professionals. You've had a few on your show, people who historically were in other industries, worked for other types of verticals, who got into home services, whether it's solar or in roofing. And these brands are massive now, right? Like if you think about home services at a national level, what national brands come to mind? You got like ADT, Empire Today, several years ago.
Yeah,
Nowadays, you have so many more, right? You have these large private equity built, acquisition built national brands like Leaf, like
yeah,
Titan Home Remodeling, and um, performance marketing, paid leads, lead generation, whatever you want to call it, is at the forefront of all that growth. I think historically people would look at home service brands who grew through owned and operated branded marketing as like, oh wow, they're really doing it. Whereas third party was kind of looked at as like, oh, like they're just calling at people a lot of times and buying leads. They don't even make their own, they don't even brand it. But at the end of the day, if you're getting appointments, you're getting sales, what does it matter? I think there's still something to be had about having a good marketing mix, but we work with a lot of brands who buy tens of thousands of leads, and they would much rather buy a non-branded third-party affiliate lead than they would an owned and operated.
wow, yeah. Then um I think you're right. Like, there's a more modern movement for sounds like a lot of private equity and a lot of excitement. They're
Yeah,
following the macroeconomic trend, right? Which is interest rates really high. And, when interest rates are really low, it's easy for Mr. Consumer to say, hey, I want to go find a new home, either one that's already like brand new or built out, or
yep,
but I think the reality, right, is that, interest rates are pretty high.
Yeah.
Consumers are seeing that it makes more sense for them to stay put and invest more into their current property. They have a rate, maybe if they've, been in the house for a while, they don't want to touch it because they refied the last time it made sense at
Right.
3.5 or 4%, right? Or 5%. So they can maybe leverage some of that equity to knock out some of these big bounty, home, roofing, flooring, windows, solar. Um, and but I can see that, there's new companies, like you said, pop up because they see the lead generation, the customer acquisition needs to be more modernized, more updated. And I know there's a company modernized, but like,
I thought that was like a plug for them. Okay.
but like you've witnessed, that's what I'm saying. And I'm trying to be humble here. Like I've seen you really, you witnessed, you built a lot of this out because you've helped companies with your expertise in
Yeah.
workflow and strategy because you had to as part of your job, right? Like you've had to help them
Yeah.
kind of evolve to catch up with how to maximize customer acquisition.
Yeah, I think it's cool to meet brands. And so kind of been our sweet spot, right? I've been, with AP for quite some time, but the sweet spot has historically was like with larger brands, right? Bigger brands, enterprise brands. Um, but over the last 24, 36 months, we've really grown
Yeah.
the portfolio to include a lot of these brands that are really $5 to $15 million, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about that from a home service standpoint, with a ticket size anywhere from 8,500 to 30,000, depending on if you're doing flooring or if you're doing solar, that's a lot of installs. That's a lot of trucks. That's a lot of people. That's a call center. So these brands, to some degree, some people consider them small, but 10 to 15 million is still quite large when you're a regional brand, whether you're in Charlotte, Orlando, Colorado, whether you're doing baths, flooring, windows, or you're an exterior contractor. Um, I feel like a lot of these brands have really matured and have gotten to the point where they have the proper technology in place, right? Obviously, you're kind of plugging our tech, right? Lead management,
Yeah.
compliance, intelligent lead routing. But not just that, they also have a proper CRM that's dialed in. They have potentially a dialer. They have everything kind of talking. They know that there's some sort of compliance that they need to have, even if they don't know the whole picture. And I think most importantly, a lot of these brands have gone out and hired professional and experts that were in mortgages or in
Right.
CPG or other verticals, utility sector, who have come in and they're like, oh, yeah, I'll work for this roofing company. Oh, wow, you're a window company and you have a contact center of 30, 40 seats. Oh, wow, you're a solar company and you have a contact center of 100. So I think experts have come
Yes.
in field at different levels, and owners and investors have finally seen the potential in saying, wow, I really need to hire experts. I just can't promote my sales guy who's really good and now he's going to be the lead guy. And you know what? You're pretty good with people. Why don't you run our call center? And that's historically how and that's not how all home service brands
Yeah.
are. But a lot of times they were family businesses, they were legacy businesses in certain regions. And if you just stayed around long enough, you were going to get promoted.
Yeah.
And that's probably still the case with a lot of home service companies, but more and more I've seen them go and hire experts in their craft, whether it's call center,
Yeah.
whether it's the dialer, whether it's
Affiliate.
lead
Yeah.
gen, performance
Yeah.
marketing. So
Yeah.
I would say had a big impact.
I agree. I think it's you could experience growth the way you talked about it within, and some of it's archaic, but if you want explosive growth or keeping up
Yeah.
with the times, you really need to find people that know what they're doing, especially when more sophisticated in lead gen. There's call center, there's affiliate, there's all these
Yep.
different channels and first party media. Man, it was like, were you like a kid in a candy store at LeadsCon? Because yeah, everybody was saying, you
Yeah.
know, there were so many, brands this time, right? Because
Yeah.
LeadsCon's
Yeah.
always known for it's probably the one of the top shows that always brings direct brands. In addition to sellers that to me I knew they've been in consumer finance or they've been in like, insurance. And now they're like, oh man, we're in home services. I'm like, wow, man, this is like eye-opening as a takeaway from LeadsCon. Top vertical, one of them being discussed, home services for sure. So you must have been a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was awesome. I think it's really cool to be part of an industry where we are getting a lot of attention. And when I say we, I say home, I mean home services. We hosted a dinner on Monday. We had 22
Yeah,
home service brands show
I saw
up.
that.
I've been
Yeah,
doing it for about 4 years now. Every year it gets bigger. And, we went from like 8 people to 15, to 20. Now we're at 30. There was 33 people there, 22 brands in total.
amazing.
Everything from a utility retail energy provider, bath manufacturer, massive window installer, massive solar company, small regional bath company,
Yeah,
large regional bath company, and kind of everything in between. And I'll tell
that's
you, man,
great.
that's my jam. Like that dinner every
Yeah,
year is my jam, and I
that's
really
great.
it fills my heart with joy to see so many people kind of come together, and then the conversations that you see, and then plus it's really, really good food and whatnot. But
Yeah,
I think home services as a whole for LeadsCon, yeah, every corner I saw people who usually don't go, and now they're there, and a
right.
lot of first timers who are like, yeah, I'm running media for this company, and I had to come. I've been hearing about it for years.
Yeah, yeah, and kudos to you for getting the buyer dinner to grow every year. It's
Yeah,
it's nice to be able to have an open dinner where people can really discuss, get to know each other. Like, we grind all day at LeadsCon, we're on
yeah.
our feet and just sit down, enjoy some good food, but like being able to listen and just observe what other people go through every day and what they're seeing out there. It's just freaking huge. And I applaud you for growing it, man.
Thank
It's
you.
awesome.
And the key ingredient is that it's an installer only.
Right.
So
It's gated.
LeadsCon
Yeah.
is obviously, like you have all these sellers trying to get to all these buyers and
Yes.
vice versa, right? But if you're a buyer, I mean, you're getting, I won't use the word hounded, right? But you're getting outreached by like 50, 60 people.
Yeah.
This dinner is a place where for 2 hours, you as an installer, you as a buyer can come.
Yes.
There's no other lead vendor. There's one sponsor who's usually a provider.
Yeah.
HomeBuddy did it this year. Has done it in the past. Um, and it's just a way for you to just kind of have like 2 hours on opening night to just kind of hang. And a lot of them trade publishers or information or go like, oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that or whatever it may be. So that's pretty cool.
That's great, man. It's awesome to witness all that. And it's
Yeah,
gated. It should be. It's smart.
totally.
I
Yeah,
actually came to one of your guys' happy hours last year, I think, and it was just really helpful for me to meet different people. So there's different forums you can do that, which I
totally.
totally respect. Um, take me back in the way back machine. Like, how did you get into lead generation? Like, what was your entry point? Um, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey. And now you're the GM of home services for Active Prospect. So, like, tell us about the journey, dude.
Yeah, yeah. That's a well, I'll keep it concise. I'll try to keep it concise here.
Yeah,
I've always been in sales, and I've always thought of sales and sales as being just the best job ever because it's like
it
uncapped.
is.
You
It
you know
is.
you're it's just the ideal path for someone like myself. And I've always been a marketer at heart. I've always been a partnership biz dev person. Um, Referrals close at a higher rate in every industry. And I've always been a big advocate of having a network and now, right, professionally, it's called business development. Prior it was just like networking. Um, but I started, my family owns a roofing company in Los Angeles called A&R Roofing. My uncle was $2-3 million company, just getting leads from like Angie's List.
Yeah.
And after the crash, I started working in his business. I had been working at a mortgage company prior to that. We all know that story,
Yep.
and was having fun getting on roofs. So he taught me all about how to measure roofs, the different types of roofs, low slope, high slope. Um, I started selling insulation, I started selling gutters, I started selling skylights, um, you know, sun tubes, you name it. And we're talking
Wow.
big, fairly large homes, Beverly Hills, Pasadena, La Cañada, out here in Southern California. So I basically did that for 2 years, along with build his website, get him a logo, get our just did kind of it was a family business. So we just got marketing. I ended up having my son in 2012. Needed some health insurance. And at the time, a lot of brands or a lot of not brands, homeowners were asking about solar. And who did they ask? They asked their roofer, like, hey, you're putting my new roof in. Do you know about
Yeah.
solar? And back then there was rebates from SCE,
Right.
LADWP, the state. Um, so I started working. I interviewed with 3 solar companies, Solar City, Barango, and a company called Real Good Solar. And I ended
Yeah.
up taking a job as a salesperson at Real Good Solar. I spent about a year and a half there, maybe 2 years, selling residential and small commercial. So kilowatts, designing systems. Back
Yeah.
then it was all cash. There was some PPA loans, but it was predominantly cash. Um, Solar was like 7, 8 bucks a watt. You would sell something in one day or 1 month, and it would take you 6 months to get an installation done. So it was a really interesting, it's not how it is today. There
Yeah.
was only 2 markets. And my manager at the time, a gentleman by the name of Brian Walrod, who owns a company now called Current Home, he left that company as branch manager to go start this company called Horizon Solar. About
Mhm.
6, 7 months later, I jumped ship. I went with them. That company went from 25, 30 employees to 1,000 in a matter of 24, 36 months. The company was doing 20, 30, 40 installs. We ended up peaking around 600, 650 installs, and that company went to private equity transaction in 2016 and again in 2019. And so I went from like a small family business selling roofing, actually selling the home service stuff, to selling solar. And then ultimately I took a position as, hey, why don't you go buy some leads? And
Right.
we had the call center. And back then, if you remember, like 2013, 2014, TCPA was starting to really come into
Yes.
play, and brands were starting to realize, like, oh man, I can get sued. So
Yes.
we went from being an all outbound call center with like 100 seats, 120 seats, to a small third party inbound team. And over the course of 2013, 2014, 2015, that completely changed. We went to an entirely inbound team, with less contact center reps, but getting more appointments, more quality leads. So I just started buying a few leads, sending them to 1 or 2 people. Over the course of a few months, it became 5, 6, 7. And then by the end of the year, I was managing a call center team that was, 10, 15, 20 people. We ended up expanding it to the entire call center. And during my peak, my buying peak, I was spending $500,000 a month buying
Yeah.
from 20, 30, 40 different sources. I
Yep.
remember going to LeadsCon in 2015 for the first time and being like, this is crazy. Like, wow. So you're telling me I'm buying a lead from you, but you're buying it from him, but he's making it. And then figuring out how that whole work. And it was mind blowing because
Yeah.
as a buyer, and this is how most home service people are, they think the lead vendor that they buy the lead from somehow is making the lead, which could be, it's possible, it
Yeah.
happens, it happens.
Yep.
But a lot of times it's, they're an aggregator.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I got into the business. And then in terms of Active Prospect, I was buying 20,000 leads, 10,000 leads, 20,000. We needed a lead management system. And matter of fact, Steve Rafferty was kind of involved in the sales process back in
Yeah.
2014. And I became one of their largest solar clients back in the day. Um, and I just used the software from 2014 to 2019 and was just a big fan of it because it did so much and saved our company so much money. And most importantly, compressed my time as a buyer to a fraction. So I was able to do more in far less time.
Unbelievable. So you got to come in with the experience of being, a top buyer, knowing the pain points and all the things that you experienced firsthand as you kind of grew.
And
And
I knew
then,
the tech,
exactly.
and I wanted to get out of construction to some degree. I know I didn't want
Yeah.
to be necessarily a buyer. I actually was trying to go work for a couple of finance companies, like Sonova, Sunlight
Mhm.
Financial, a few others, and it just didn't work out, thankfully. And then I happened to be in Austin for Austin City Limits and was talking to
Mhm.
Steve and the team at the time, and they're like, "Hey, we want to we want to grow the company. We're trying to grow home services. You think you'd be interested?" And at the time, I was like, "I don't think so. I've never sold software, right? Like I think of software as like some
Yeah.
young 20-year-old, right? Like pounding the phone
Yeah.
but they had never hired somebody who hadn't had software experience. I had never worked for a software company. We took a chance on each other, and it's the best decision I've ever made in terms of career or education, just for my family in general.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
the people of active prospect culture is really
for
important for you
sure.
guys. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I love your journey, man. I think it's
Thank you.
amazing when you can. There's certain guys that I've worked with over the years that have straddled between building. They can say that they were a buyer and they learned from all of their
Right.
pain points, their experiences, and translated that either into a service provider
Yeah.
or generating their own leads. But it's amazing that you've been through that. And you brought up solar. I actually wanted to ask you a question about that because I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up. So it's kind of like your big entry point into the space. But in 2012, like, the Obama administration had all these tax rebates, and it was big. It was a big political. It was part of like
Yeah.
their ticket, right? It was part of what they promised everybody. Green initiative. So solar blew up, right? There was Solar City. There was just all this
Huge.
crazy, massive customer acquisition. I think there was some hope in too, and I talked to Colleen Butterfield about this on my show too. She's a good friend. She used to work for
I
me,
listened to
and
that episode, matter of fact. That was a
yeah,
good episode.
awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So I love your take too because, like, I think not getting political, but just saying, just by pure fact, they were coming into this administration. There was talks of green, Green Deal and so forth. I was really hoping, and I think the lead gen space too was too, that there was going to be another big wave of rebates or excitement around solar or green energy, and it hasn't been there. And it's just like there's other big issues in going into the political,
Yeah, yeah.
um, but it's not there. Do you think it's just there's other big issues, or is there not enough supply? What do you think is the take there?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of government subsidies and rebates, I mean, depending on what state you're in, there's still certain stuff. I feel like the solar industry as a whole has just become a massive, massive success. I mean, when
Yeah,
I got into solar, the people who I worked around, you call them granola, call them, greenies, but most of the people I worked with who have gone on to do different things all over clean tech, but the people initially were people who really believed
yeah,
in the green economy and were
yeah,
reading uh the books out
yeah,
there, and we're just all about the Schwarzenegger Million Roof Initiative. Um and people who drove hybrids like myself, and who just, man, I wish I could have an EV. Like if I could just drive an EV, that'd be so cool. And now 2024, Tesla is one of the biggest purchased cars in California,
yeah,
really the US. I really believe if you just kind of think about where we came from in 2010, 2012 to where we're at right now, I mean, it's been just massive boom. There's been a lot of companies that boom and busted and gone under, certainly, but I've never seen or met more people in the industry. Granted, the industry has changed. I think there's definitely a need for regulation at multiple levels, certainly at the sales level, with
yeah,
people. There's a term that goes around called subprime solar, which we don't need to get into,
yeah,
but exists. But overall, I think you have to go through those cycles. Renewable is no different.
yeah,
Residential solar is no different. It's still continuing today. There's companies going out of business in residential solar, but at the same time, there's also a lot of other brands who weren't in solar, who did roofing, windows, or
right.
whatnot, who are getting into it. And I
Hmm.
think it's just a continuously evolving industry. And with battery storage, so now you have your panels, you got your storage, you got your
Yes,
EV. Um, I mean, it just makes sense. And really, it's driven by the rising rates of utilities.
yes,
So depending on what state you live on, it makes a lot of sense or it makes a little sense. So it
got
just
it.
depends.
Yeah, it's still state specific. That's right. I think that's And the
This is
battery
something you should
component's
know,
huge.
living in
Yes.
San Diego gas and
Yeah,
electric territory, where your price per kilowatt hour is the highest in the country. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't, but I just,
It's insane. Yeah, yeah,
everything's big.
yeah. But
Everything's
it
the
also
highest
is
of,
per capita. It also has the most solar companies in that region because of that actual,
yeah.
because the energy costs are so high in San Diego.
Yep, and so the battery component is a big awareness, eye-opening for a lot of folks,
Yeah,
in these communities too. So it's a great way to grow those businesses. So solar was a big, it was kind of the Kickstarter, if you may, for you and for home services at Active Prospect. Why why would you think that, what's important for home services for Active Prospect, or the other way around, is why is Active Prospect more needed for home services?
yeah. Well, I guess I'll kind of answer both. One, Active Prospect as a brand prior to 2019, 2020, really focused on your traditional performance marketing, lead gen space, lead sellers, right? Trusted form. Everybody understands trusted form and what that is now. I know trusted form, when it came out, according to Steve, right, was kind of despised, right? Nobody wanted to put that. Like, I don't want to put that on my website.
Yeah,
Now everybody requires it, and it's kind of hit this cross the chasm,
yeah,
and everyone uses it. But I over the last 5 years, we've grown the portfolio from being some of these enterprise brands, like I mentioned earlier, now to your average bath company who's buying 500 leads in Wisconsin, your window company who is out there in Colorado who's doing 1,000 leads, and 50% of them are third party.
yeah,
And once again, kind of going back to the maturity of marketers. Historically in home services, the marketer or the CMO was really good, like at direct mail or radio or, newspaper, graphic design creative, and slogans and stuff like that. I've
yeah,
worked for a few marketing CMOs like that. Now, over the last 10 years, especially over the last 5 years, home service brands want performance marketers. They want people who are acclimated with digital marketing, because they're not dumping all their money into direct mail anymore. They're not, going all in on radio the way. So performance marketing has become the pinnacle. I'll give you an example. I recently placed someone at one of the largest, and I want to say the word place, but connected one of the largest roofing companies with one of the most brightest digital marketer, performance marketers. And that roofing company was specifically looking for somebody in the performance marketing, in the digital marketing space. And so you have a lot of brands out there who are really focused on that. With that, people who have that skill set, they turn to technology to go like, hey, how do I streamline my funnel? How do I
right,
get my lead flow like optimized? I can put as many leads at the top of the funnel, but if I don't have the right lead management, if I don't have a ping tree, if I don't have compliance or lead age, all these different pieces, lead management, intelligent routing, if I don't have the right CRM, the dialer, if I don't have AI SMS, so digital marketers and the CMOs, marketing directors, they're so much more focused in on the technology layer, which is the funnel that you're pouring in all those leads. Whereas historically, the thought process was like, I just gonna go buy more leads. If I
right,
just buy more leads and I just call them more, then that's the way to do business.
right.
And the new rules coming out, and
Yeah,
shake stir and stir shaken, and all these
yeah,
just new telephonic guidelines, those days are gone. And
yes,
there's still call center directors and marketers that I meet that are a little old school that still
right.
believe that, but the data shows that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so you guys are like, you're like the nucleus, like you really help for my, how I observe, because you're
Yeah.
really helping connect all these points, whether it's lead intake, whether it's the routing, whether it's and the decisioning on the intake, whether it's the TCPA piece for visual playback, or also just, making sure that analytics, right? And understanding the consumer journey and getting a better experience and really helping your clients just have a full grasp of what the consumer is seeing and hearing on a lot of these
Well,
ads, right?
that's exactly. I use the term we're a protective layer in front of your CRM. We're a bi-directional data highway. We're the technology layer that allows buyers and sellers to exchange the consumer data along with, we're air traffic control, we're a
Yes.
digital underwriter. So I use a lot of these analogies in talking to home service brands. And one of the things that I try to do in selling software is try not to talk about the software. I really try to talk about the value, what it actually does in layman's terms. And as performance marketers, myself, we and you can get into the caveats of filtering and
Yes.
data analytics and all that, right? But for your average marketer and installer who just wants leads for their call center to get appointments for their sales team, they don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
So I think a big approach that has really helped us in home services here at Active Prospect is focusing on the value of what our technology does and what it allows you to do in less time. Rather than historically with technology, you're getting in the caveats of the API and the transactions and all this stuff, which, my first year I had to learn that, right? Like I used to
Right.
try to sell the tech based on how and I would just lose people. They'd be like, what? Like, this is sounds, I can't get it.
It's not
If I can't
sexy.
understand what you're doing, I
Yeah.
probably not buy it. So
Yeah.
I think that's been
It's
helpful.
it No, it has been helpful. I think, and now it is front and center. We have to talk about the compliance aspect and um, you know, we'll touch on that here in a second, but like you've been so active on, in building out home services for Active Prospect, but like there's a lot of like I usually go to the kind of the broader shows like the Lead Generation World,
Yeah.
LeadsCon, Affiliate Summit, but you've spent a lot of time carving out specific, to these home services shows, right? Like there's a lot. If companies are wanting to expand into the home services space, whether you're a lead generator, service provider, what are some of the top shows out there that you kind of have on your radar this year that outside of course, we just came back from LeadsCon?
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I go to all the shows. I have been to all the shows, some that I probably shouldn't have gone to. Along with LeadsCon, Lead Gen World, Contact.io,
Yeah,
Affiliate Summit East, Affiliate Summit West, which it's all kind of more industry performance marketing
right.
as we're starting to see more installers come, like we talked about earlier. But within the
Yeah.
home service industry, if it's roofing, you have the International Roofing Conference that goes on every year. It's massive. Within that industry, you also have the West Coast Roofing Conference, the East Coast Roofing Conference. For solar, you have an event called RE Plus. It used to be
Mhm.
called SPI. It's going on in Anaheim this year. We do an event every year, Solar Lead Gen Summit every year there. But that's the Super Bowl of solar. So everyone's coming to that. Um, you essentially have somewhat of the same in all the different industries. I don't necessarily get into some of the sub verticals like
Yeah.
flooring and things like that, but they all have it. Along with that, you also have this, you have a company called Qualified Remodeler, which is a really big kind of source of information for home service
Yeah.
industries overall. They do an excellent event called the Top 500 or the QR 500, which ranks all the home service companies in order of revenue. And they give out awards and people go to it every year. We've sponsored it for 2 or 3 years and
Wow.
it's really helped grow our portfolio. They also do another one called the FAST Conference, which is more tech lead gen focused. They're doing it in actually Austin next month, and we're sponsoring that as well. But those events are like the premier events where you're going to go and meet owners, CMOs, and call center managers. Um, there's also another layer that I'll speak to of kind of sales, um, acumen, sales, leadership, where brands send their sales team or sales managers. And a gentleman by the name of Dave Yoho, he's been around for like 30, 40 years. think someone mentioned he's like 100. He's still teaching people how to sell at the table.
Wow.
There's also a few others out there, Grosso University, um, and I try to check them all out
Yeah.
over the 5 years.
Yeah.
Thankfully, our marketing team and our company has been on growth mode and has really allowed us to travel. And I think getting out there, you meet people, and you just create that energy.
Yeah, and like I said, not all of them are going to be winners, but you got to go through and experience some of them firsthand to see if they're worth it for you to invest more resources, come back, sponsor. And
Yeah,
it's hard because you can't be at all places, every week. But I agree. Post pandemic, like you've done a great job just getting out there and getting back face to face, and um, especially for a sales process that typically involves the sales professional having to go, in some instances, meet with the consumer face to face, right? So it's like you want to make sure the marketing's lined up, and being out there and getting a better understanding of that experience is super, super helpful. What
definitely.
what's the preferred channel out there today in the space? So like, different verticals out there. Some people like in ACA or Medicare, it's heavily weighted inbounds, right? Or if it's the debt world, they like a lot of traffic. Like, so what do you think is, I mean, what do you see coming through your pipes? Like, is kind of like the preferred channel? Is it warm transfer appointment setting or digital leads? What's kind of like the number one channel out there?
Yeah, I think it's predicated on your coverage, right? So for these national brands who are massive, who own tons of zips, they can play in all the different channels, right? Because every publisher, every affiliate
Yeah,
wants to cater to them. If you're smaller, but you're still larger, um, it's harder to do that. So you're kind
yeah,
of having to have a little bit more of a marketing mix. So I'll kind of answer it in two ways. At the national enterprise level, brands who are massive have, 10, 15 states. Definitely affiliate third party lead generation. They're buying tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of leads. They're also spending millions of dollars in direct mail, and a lot of them do television. So they're getting inbound calls coming in. Um, Once again, if you're able to buy media at scale, you can do things like that. For
yep,
smaller regional companies who don't do that, they have a good marketing mix. I think the best companies that I see who are really rocking it, 20% to 10 to 20% referrals. If you can't dominate or stand up a referral channel with all the referral technology out there, like Get the Referral or
hmm,
Snowball, that's kind of the key piece that I see for a lot of brands, 10 to 20% referrals. Then from there, they're doing their O&O, Facebook lead ads, Google, doing it enough
party,
where
yeah,
they think they can make sense. That's probably another 10 to 20%. And then I'm seeing a lot of brands, 30 to 40% doing third party leads, whether it's from the big, large entities like Modernize and Home Advisor and HomeBuddy, or whether it's a more diverse where they're getting into the publishers that you see and meet at
yeah.
LeadsCon. Um, and so it really depends on kind of how big you are, how many regions and states you're in. But I do see more and more in the home service space inbound calls
Yeah,
and technology like Ringba, who I know you had Adam
Adam.
Young on your
Yeah,
show. But I think the rise of inbound calls is becoming undeniable. And more, as you see more and more publishers and firms get into creating that space and creating the customer service with home service buyers,
yeah.
which is different than other verticals, I think you're going to see a lot more inbound call media budget going that way rather than traditional leads, my opinion.
I agree. I agree. And I think, and we'll touch on that in the FCC stuff too, because I think that's a good way to be compliant. Um, you guys have, before we get there though, I just want to touch on, because I had a thought on, I
Yeah.
know a lot of folks that work with you, and I just had dinner with Steve um, at LeadsCon, and it was cool because he and I haven't had a chance to sit down for a while. What's up, Steve? Hope you get to listen. Um, and have related well to Margaret. I've worked with I saw Margaret on her first day on the job at Lead Generation World, and you guys have had some amazing parties at, like I said, LeadsCon party last year was great.
Yep.
We were at the Meow Wolf and Contact.io, and it was just a surreal experience. But Steve said everybody came together recently for your company. You know, it's not an offsite; it was more just a company gathering, right? Or I guess whatever it is an offsite, but it was getting everybody together. What's the culture mean? Like, you guys there's some really good talent at the company. Like,
Yeah.
what's the culture like, being in there? Like I said, you've grown with the business. You said yourself it was a game changer career move for you.
Yeah.
What's the culture like there?
That's a very good question. When I got here 5 years ago, there was 25, 30 people. There was a lot of people who had been here for multiple years. Now the company is, I think, 140, 150, and it's people from all over the world. When I
Yeah.
first started, it was like really an Austin-based company, people from Austin coming to the office.
Yes.
Now we don't have a central location. We have people all over the world. Um, and I got to give it up to the team and the brand for doing that. And I think it starts with the leadership. As you mentioned, Margaret Wise has come on board and she's really created this environment of collaboration between all the different departments that you have to have.
Yeah.
Um, we recently had a sales VP, his name's Stuart Lazarus, who's come on and who has a wealth of experience and is really guiding and growing the sales team,
Awesome.
which is sometimes a challenge when you're in such a product-led company, which is
Yeah.
Active Prospect, which is, right, Steve, right? He's always game to talk about the product.
Right.
And I also think it just comes from the top down. Like, for instance, the transparency factor. I've never worked for a company that's as transparent with their employees. I'll give you some examples. So Steve does this classic corner once a week where he just literally shares his thoughts about what's going on in the business, the industry. I look forward to it every week. I think a lot of the people in our company look forward to it. And
Oh,
it
right
really
on.
kicks off the weekly meeting. And it's 5 minutes of like a mini TED talk. And sometimes we're going deep into whether it's industry related, whether it's regulation, sometimes it's about the product, sometimes it's about the people. I think he does a good job of kind of um, just speaking to the company for 5 minutes and going like, hey, like, I'm a real person.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's another thing right after that. We have a form called the Ask Us Anything form.
Yeah.
Anybody in the company anonymously can just ask a question, and he literally just reads off the questions, and some of them are like not negative, but not necessarily positive. And
Yeah.
he approaches them, he talks about it, he goes, this is why we're doing it, thank you for sharing. um we have a set of core values that were put together several years ago that the HR team and the marketing team and just the company overall does a really good job of lifting up, making
Yeah.
visible. And I think all that combined, along with having on sites, along with having an environment where everyone feels safe and open, and I mean, it's a multicultural company. There's so many people,
Yes.
so many colors, so many different
Yes.
places. And
Yes.
I've never worked for a company like that before. And it's been awesome to work for such a brand that has grown and still kind of kept that original openness and transparency.
Yeah, amen, brother. Up, Joy's waking up. I'm gonna get her on in a second. But
Biscuit, it's game
the
time.
you know what? I agree, and I've got, I had to work with some of those folks like Kelly and Phoebe, but I've met Earl and Erica recently, like just over the last couple of years, just amazing
Yeah.
people, all different walks of life, the melting pot of collective brains and mind share for helping uh take it to the next. Joey, come here. Come here. You gotta make your
Yeah.
come here. Say hi. Joey,
Doing
look.
it.
There's
This is your
Biscuit.
first
Say
podcast.
hi.
Yeah.
Say hi. See you. Say hi.
See,
Say
I
hi,
told
Biscuit.
you we got to
Oh,
highlight this part. Your podcast,
oh.
it could be a new
Yeah,
thing with different animals, right? One week dogs, next week cats. I know we could do all types of stuff with Liner Connections here, but this is Biscuit. This is my love of my life.
Biscuit.
One of them,
Oh,
my son,
oh,
Joaquin.
oh
But
man.
Joey, he went and got a haircut, just so you know.
Yes.
So
He's
Liner
looking
Connection.
good. Biscuit, you look good, man. I love it. I love it. I love it, dude. That's amazing, man. It's super,
Yeah,
super
yeah, yeah.
cool. Thank you. We got him on. We got him on.
We got him on. We got him on. Yeah, I want to put him right in.
No, shout out again to such an awesome team, and I'm glad you guys got together. Let's we'll go a little bit longer. Thank you for taking the time, but like,
Yeah, no problem.
what do you see as the evolution of artificial intelligence within the home services community? Like, is where are folks? I mean, obviously, there's contact center engagement, like trying to help appointment setting and take deeper qualifications. Companies like Verse and so forth that are really well within the space, but like, which I know you guys, work well with. But like, where do you see the next level of focus? Within everybody's trying to implement AI in their businesses.
Yeah, no, everybody is. I would say like I don't know if everyone's trying to implement it. I want to say that certainly everyone's trying to learn what they should know so that they can figure out how to implement it. I think to your point, there's a lot of brands like Verse, like Drips, Channel Automation, Hatch, quite a few of these marketing brands who are really helping with appointment setting, SMS, outreach. And so I think I see that as kind of the biggest focus right now in the call center space, compressing labor, um, being able to get somebody to talk with an AI,
Yeah.
piece, chatbot.
Yep.
But what I'm seeing is just more and more folks trying to understand, okay, what is it? What is it that I need to know? And
Right.
it's this interesting space right now where, and I actually did at Lead Gen World, I did an AI presentation where I hosted, uh, Verse, I think it was Full Throttle, and Squeeze, Carson from Squeeze,
Yeah.
that, talking about AI in the call center space. But I think right now we're in an interesting place where there's a lot of panels, a lot of discussions, but to be honest, Joey, it's rare that I come across an actual installer marketer who's like, yeah, I've implemented AI. It's doing this, it's doing that.
Right.
Right now, it's more of the season of let me learn about it so that I'm not like not in the know. Let
Right.
me hear about it and let me figure out what I can do initially. But I don't necessarily see it with my clients,
Right.
um, where they're like, yeah, I'm full blown. I heard somebody the other day talk about AI lead scoring,
Right.
using, and I kind of always feel like maybe that was AI. We just never referenced that as being it. But Faraday is a brand
Yeah.
that we work with. That's an integration partner that works with a lot of brands. Think Unlimited is another kind of SMS AI rehash technology. But I think right now we're in a space where everyone's trying to understand it.
I agree. I agree too. I think you're right. It's like we got to just keep an eye out and see how it's in because it works. We see it work with appointment setting, qualifications, and contact center, just getting more and more qualified people to the table. But we got to see it play out in the business process, especially for if buyers are trying to be more effective, with consumer engagement. I'm sure they're looking at solutions. We'll just have to see it play out, and hopefully we'll keep everything running smoother and grow, and magnify,
I could see it playing a big piece on the ping, right? For all those buyers who buy on the ping and who are always changing their
Yes.
filters, the
Yes.
ability to have an AI that understands your bidding process and history,
Yes.
you can effectively know will bid on the ping and purchase leads on your behalf without you being engaged.
Yeah.
And that's going to free up a third of everyone's time right there. I
I
mean, that would
know.
be, if it could do it more effective than
Yes.
somebody who's, always on and figuring out what bids and changing stuff like that. So I think it's definitely coming, as time progresses.
I agree. Talk to me too about Ping. You just talked about Ping, and I know you guys have been at the front here trying to help lead the charge with the FCC. I think you guys are using the
Yeah.
term ping, pick, post, right?
Yep.
Inbounds are also a really good way for brands to be able to take calls inbound without having to worry about the outbound TCPA, express ring consent, the one-to-one consent, as we're going to see in January 2020 five. But like, what do you say is you guys are helping lead the charge here? I mean, like, so
Yeah.
what's your what I will say is, and tell me if I'm wrong, at LeadsCon, I haven't seen, people are talking about it, but I haven't seen much business process change yet. And tell me, when will we see, is it going to be like, Q3, people start really trying to implement this into their business process? Like, um, are you guys, because you guys are in the thick of it. So like, are you finally starting to see brands like or trying to implement the one-to-one consent on their lead line?
We definitely see in home, I can speak for home services, but in general, we definitely see a rise in awareness of trusted form and compliance in general. I think in lead generation, there's always been brands who want to be compliant. Sometimes it's after the fact, after they've already settled litigation. Um, but then there's a lot of brands who are like, hey, I want to be compliant because I know it's the right thing to do. Um, but we've seen a rise in interest, people knowing that they do need to get prepared. So I think that's happening. What changes people are making to their purchasing? Like, are lead sellers not selling as many leads to buyers? No. Are lead buyers not buying as many leads from sellers? No. When that happens, I think change is going to evolve very rapidly because now you're talking about revenue on both sides. I think people are taking this year to put in place the compliance, the
Yeah,
purchase, what they need to do, um, educate themselves on what do I have to do? What makes
right.
me fully compliant, and what's the least amount I got to do to not get sued tremendously, and then everything in between. But I think our team has definitely done a phenomenal job. We have
Yes,
FCC updates webinar, which uh,
yes,
our chief compliance officer Ben Ferrer has ran. He's done
yeah,
great. Margaret's kind of led the charge there, and the team and the marketing team have just done a phenomenal job of really highlighting us as an expert in that area. But in terms of change, kind of going back to the AI thing,
yeah.
I haven't seen a tremendous
I
change.
know, I
I
know.
think people are trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
And I ultimately think the FCC, this is my personal opinion, just reading
yeah,
stuff. I think it goes too far. I think ultimately
yeah,
it'll hurt businesses. And
yeah,
when businesses get hurt and they can't buy leads and they can't grow and
yeah.
service their industry, they're going to complain to their politicians, they're going to complain. And nobody wants less people employed and less businesses flourishing. So I think there's going to be some type of effect there. What it is, who knows? And then lastly, you probably know more about this than I, but in theory, lead prices are going to go up
Yes,
because if you're only selling the lead to one person, now that lead seller or publisher needs to make the same revenue or something close. They're going to charge more. Is quality going to go up? Probably, yes. Exclusive is more better quality historically than multi-sell, but will that weigh out? And will cost of acquisition skyrocket? I don't know the answer, but we're definitely all going to find out in the next 6 months here.
yeah, and you talked about it earlier in the show, like, when you were building out your call center in 2013, the mobile provision of the TCPA, consent came out, and kind of everybody was like talking about, where do you put the language? Does it have to be a submit button? Does there need to be a checkbox? What's the font size? But everybody copied, and there was somebody came out with the marketing partners list, and then everybody copied that.
We
And
have
here
the
we are,
hyperlink.
everybody has 10,000 names on their marketing partners list, and the
Yeah,
FCC saying it's ridiculous, and they're right. But going to
yeah.
where we are now is going to hurt, and so I know that in this, all the webinar series have been helpful. You guys, Troutman, a lot of the other big, um, um, what's it called, call center compliance. They've done a great job. You know, it's really, there may be a carve out from, because the small business component, any businesses 500, we'll have to see how that. I know there's another group, the Insurance Marketing Coalition, that put in a stay for the current rules. We'll have to see how it plays out. But it just, the theme at the show was everybody's talking about it, but I know you guys are going, it's a copycat um industry. So once you guys implement a platform tech stack that people should follow, I think a lot of people and will implement it, because they can't just stop talking about it anymore. They have to implement it if it doesn't get extended. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be pretty interesting if any of these extensions happen and so forth. But I know you guys will continue to lead the charge and pushing more info out there for us.
It's been interesting to see all the technology companies, including ours, kind of come together for the greater good to try to understand what's the next movement or where are we going all together as an industry. Um, and people trying to understand compliance is not a bad thing. And so
Yes.
been good for business. And I agree, our team's done a great job. And um, I know you've talked about it with some of the other guests that you've had as well. So
Yeah.
definitely coming around.
Thank you so much for before I let you go, dude. You got a keyboard behind you. Are you tickle the ivories? Do you play? I didn't know that.
This is so I operate a work share office in the city of Claremont, which is in Southern California, about an hour east of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
This is where I come. So I have an office. There's a full stack developer next to me. There's a guy who actually runs an AI music company.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
and it's called Traxy AI.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, this is you got all my little kind of badges there from all the different conferences. And
Nice, dude.
uncle is a big Owens Corning contractor, so the Pink Panther stuff.
Love
And
it.
Dabula sent me a soccer jersey. They just sponsored the Portland Timbers. Um, and yeah, this is kind of where I kind of get away from the house and do my thing.
It's awesome, dude. So I saved a lot of my my trade show badges too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have a little collection of them here too. But I
Do
used to
you?
when I was at Double Positive, I had a whole wall of them, from it's if you remember the movie Major League where Willie Mays Hayes, he every time he
Yeah, yeah,
stole a base, he would nail them to the wall. So I had
yeah.
them all from and I wish I would have kept on doing it. I just stopped doing it, but it was freaking awesome. I love you, man. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming on. You are such a good influencer within our space. You are so well loved and so well respected by everybody.
Thank you.
I appreciate the dogs coming on for a minute.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah, yeah,
Biscuit.
yeah.
And just really good to have you as a friend. And I would encourage anybody that isn't connected with you to follow you to capture not only what you're putting out there, but what Active Prospect putting out there. Anything else you want to share before we drop?
No, congratulations on consulting. Congratulations on your success. Um, you're the ultimate biz dev
Thank you,
networker,
brother.
and I just appreciate you letting me grab some time on your show. And congratulations on 28 episodes. Is it 28th?
Yes, yes, with some special episodes in there too to
All right.
help promote some. But
Awesome.
yes, yes. And so I'm
Awesome,
gonna
man.
keep
I
rolling,
hope you
man.
get to
I love it.
100. I'm excited. I watch it when I see friends on the show or a topic. And
Yeah.
thanks for having me on.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I'll see you. Hopefully see you soon.
All right. See you later, Joey. Bye.